Imagine you're a maintenance worker in a really large, just incredibly busy hospital.
Right.
And you're exhausted. You're like, I don't know, 12 hours into a shift,
Oh,
pushing this heavy cart down one of those uh, fluorescent lit
yeah,
corridors.
the ones that never seem to end.
Exactly. And you spot this crumpled piece of paper just shoved haphazardly under a waiting room chair.
Oh, the worst.
Right. You sigh, you're genuinely annoyed, and you bend down to throw it away. But, and here's the catch, when you pick it up, it's not a discarded receipt.
No.
It's not a candy wrapper. It is a handwritten letter deliberately placed there thanking you for your invisible work.
It's wild.
It really is. And today, we're doing a deep dive into the mind of the exact person who left it there.
Yeah, we are.
We're looking at this practice that, honestly, it sits right on the borderline between, like, a public nuisance and just profound empathy.
It's such a delicate boundary to walk, because when we usually encounter anonymous gestures in public spaces, they tend to be destructive.
Right, like graffiti or vandalism.
Exactly. Or just careless littering.
Wow.
But what we're unpacking today is an intentional subversion of that exact expectation.
Yeah.
We are looking at this anonymous, deeply personal blog post written by someone who has spent the last 3 whole years, secretly planting handwritten expressions of gratitude in the most mundane, often overlooked corners of public spaces.
And the mission for this deep dive, just to be clear with you listening right now, is to explore the text of this specific, profoundly moving blog post from beginning to end.
Right, strictly the text.
Yes, we aren't bringing in outside sociological studies or, external frameworks. We're going to strictly navigate the author's own words to understand the architecture of this 3-year-long personal experiment in anonymous gratitude.
Because we want to decode their specific motivations and the highly calculated methods they use and the emotional payoff they describe.
Because on the surface, the text is incredibly brief.
It really is.
But it is dense. It is like a masterclass in observing human friction.
The brevity of the source material is exactly what makes it so compelling, honestly. The author they aren't writing a manifesto.
Oh, right. They aren't trying to start a global movement or anything.
Yeah, no, not at all. They are simply documenting a private routine. But by carefully analyzing the specific scenarios they describe, we uncover a very sophisticated understanding of how unseen labor operates in our daily environments.
Okay, so let's start with the sheer mechanics of what this person is actually doing. Because the commitment level here is, well, it's the first thing that jumped out at me.
Oh, absolutely.
The blog begins by introducing this core action, right? They leave handmade thank you notes behind in various public places, and they explicitly state they have been doing this continuously for 3 years.
3 years? That's significant.
It's huge. 3 years is not a New Year's resolution. That is over 1,000 days of deliberately crafting pieces of paper, carrying them around, and covertly dropping them.
Yeah.
It shifts this from a random act of whimsy into, like, a structured discipline.
Sustaining any private practice for 3 years requires a tremendous amount of internal conviction. Think about the logistics involved.
Right, the actual day-to-day of it.
Exactly. They have to anticipate their outings, prepare the materials in advance.
Like writing them all out beforehand.
Yeah, and actively look for opportunities to deploy them while just navigating their own daily life. This is a deliberate, ongoing intervention into the public sphere.
And the specific environments they target for these interventions are fascinating. The text lists the locations really clearly. They mention leaving these notes under hospital chairs, in public toilets, and on restaurant tables.
Yeah, highly specific spots.
The author writes that they leave these pieces of paper in all sorts of places as they walk away.
And by targeting highly transient spaces, like hospital waiting rooms or public restrooms, the author guarantees the note is found by the exact class of unseen maintenance workers they want to reach.
The invisible workforce, basically.
Right. These are environments defined by a constant cycle of use and restoration. People come in, they consume the space, they leave a mess, and someone invisible comes in afterward to reset the stage.
Okay, I understand the theory, but I have to push back on the reality of this execution for a second.
Oh, sure.
Because it feels, I don't know, almost cruel to intentionally trigger a cleaner's annoyance.
Oh, how so?
Well, if I'm a janitor cleaning a public restroom, which is arguably one of the most physically unpleasant jobs imaginable, and I see a piece of paper left on the counter or on the floor, my blood pressure spikes.
Naturally.
My immediate internal monologue is, someone couldn't be bothered to find a trash can.
By leaving these notes, isn't the author essentially manipulating that worker's emotions?
That's a really valid point.
Like they are creating a negative spike of frustration just to deliver a positive message. That feels like a huge risk, perhaps even a bit arrogant, assuming the worker will be charmed rather than just, irritated by the fake out. I hear you. But that tension is the central paradox of the entire practice, and the author does not shy away from it.
Really? They bring that up.
In fact, they build their entire philosophy around it. The text explicitly acknowledges this exact scenario. The author states that this message is intended specifically for the person who thinks it's trash and gets annoyed while cleaning it up.
Wow. So they know.
They absolutely know. They are not hoping the cleaner finds it magically resting on a silver platter. They are weaponizing the cleaner's inevitable annoyance.
Weaponizing the annoyance. That's okay. So they are fully aware of the irritation they are causing. Why design an act of kindness that begins with a moment of manufactured anger?
Because it breaks the worker's autopilot.
Oh, interesting.
Right. If you consider the nature of repetitive physical labor, wiping down the 50th restaurant table of the night, or emptying the 100th waste bin in a hospital, the worker enters a state of flow that is largely numb to their surroundings.
Yeah, you just kind of zone out to get through the shift.
Exactly. The annoyance of finding a stray piece of trash is an expected part of that numbness.
Yeah.
But when that piece of trash contradicts its own nature,
When it turns out to be a thank you note.
right, when the expected nuisance suddenly speaks to them with gratitude, it creates a moment of engineered cognitive dissonance.
Engineered cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, the sudden sharp pivot from expected frustration to unexpected appreciation anchors the message much deeper than if someone had just handed them a generic thank you card.
It is a radical emotional jolt. They're pulling the worker completely out of the mechanical rhythm of their job.
Exactly.
I mean, you've probably had that feeling in a different context, right?
Yeah.
Like when you brace yourself for an argument and the other person suddenly apologizes and agrees with you.
Yeah. That whiplash.
The relief is so profound because of the negative anticipation. The author is utilizing that contrast. They are dragging the worker into a moment of acute presence.
And we see the ultimate goal of that emotional jolt when we look at the author's primary motivation. The text states these notes are left with the hope of reaching those who work silently and without receiving any thanks.
The silent workers.
Yes. And the author paints a very specific portrait of the target recipient. They describe someone working with a gloomy face.
A gloomy face. That phrase carries so much weight.
It really does.
It captures the sheer exhaustion of invisible labor. It's the face you make when you feel entirely unseen by the society moving around you.
Yeah, that invisible weight.
The author believes that if this specific worker, carrying this specific gloom, encounters the unexpected note, it will, and this is a direct translation from the text, live on in a corner of their heart for the rest of the day.
It is an attempt to alter the worker's internal narrative.
To literally change how their day feels.
Exactly. The blog states the desired outcome is to make the finder feel, I'm glad I did this work.
Yeah.
The author isn't just offering a polite social pleasantry here.
No, it's deeper than that.
They are attempting to inject a sudden sense of dignity and meaning into a task that the world usually treats as completely disposable. They are validating the labor itself.
Validating the labor. But wait, if validating the labor is the goal, why the secrecy?
That's the million-dollar question.
Like, why not just look the hospital janitor in the eye and say, thank you for keeping this place clean?
And here is where the text makes a startlingly honest confession.
Okay, let's get into it.
The author writes that doing things that make others happy, treating people the way you want to be treated, is surprisingly difficult.
Surprisingly difficult. Okay.
Yeah. They admit that putting those feelings into spoken words is often embarrassing or awkward.
Wow. Okay, so this admission shifts the entire framing of the blog.
Completely.
Because initially, you might think this is the diary of a naturally charismatic, extroverted philanthropist who just, effortlessly brightens every room they enter.
Right. The kind of person who knows everyone's name at the coffee shop.
Yes. But no, the author is deeply constrained by social friction.
Very much so.
They possess a high degree of internal empathy, clearly, but they lack the external mechanisms to deploy it comfortably. They recognize that interrupting a stranger's day to deliver an earnest compliment carries a heavy burden of vulnerability.
It's an incredibly relatable paralysis, honestly.
Oh, totally. Think about your own daily routine. You've probably had that moment you make eye contact with the person sweeping the food court. You feel a genuine surge of appreciation for their work.
Yeah, you think, wow, they are working so hard.
Right. But the social friction of actually stopping your momentum, breaking their momentum, and saying the words just feels too monumental. So you just keep walking.
You swallow the gratitude.
Exactly, you swallow it. This author feels that exact same introverted hesitation, but they refuse to let the gratitude die there.
It's a brilliant form of emotional time shifting.
Emotional time shifting. I like that. What do you mean by that?
Well, just like you might prepare a meal on Sunday to eat on Wednesday because you know you'll be too tired to cook later.
Oh, like meal prepping for emotions.
Exactly. The author is preparing their gratitude in advance. They are capturing their empathy in a physical medium when they feel safe and brave in their own home, so they can deliver it later in environments where they know their social anxiety will just, silence them.
Emotional time shifting.
Hmm.
That perfectly captures the mechanics of this practice. It is a deliberate workaround for a perceived personal flaw.
Right.
And what the blog reveals next is that this workaround wasn't just like a random idea they stumbled upon one day.
No, it has a very specific origin.
Right. If this practice was born out of social paralysis, it actually stems from a very specific, haunting observation of social grace. The author pivots the narrative to detail a deeply ingrained memory from a decade ago.
Yeah, the catalyst for this entire 3-year experiment is a single fleeting interaction the author witnessed 10 years prior.
10 years. They held on to this for a decade.
The text says this scene stuck with them, or more accurately, it clings to their memory.
Paint the picture for us. What does the text say?
They describe being in a supermarket and observing an older male site worker. And the text uses a descriptive word that translates roughly to intimidating or tough-looking someone whose physical presence commands a certain wariness.
An intimidating worker. You can visualize the archetype instantly, right?
Oh, for sure.
The intimidating guy with a very intense gaze. He likely has a rough exterior, perhaps wearing weathered work clothes, projecting an aura that basically tells the people around him to keep their distance.
Yeah, don't mess with me.
Right, and the cashier ringing him up is probably bracing for a blunt, transactional, maybe even gruff exchange.
But the author witnesses a profound subversion of that archetype.
What happens?
This intimidating man with his intense eyes looks the cashier directly in the face. He offers a gentle smile and simply says, "Thank you."
Wow, the cinematic contrast of that moment is staggering.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It really is. You have this mountain of a man, visually defined by toughness, utilizing incredible gentleness. He effortlessly crosses the invisible barrier between customer and service worker, delivering direct, vocalized gratitude.
Yeah.
It shatters the cashier's expectations, and clearly, it absolutely shattered the author's expectations as a bystander.
The author is analyzing their own vicarious experience of that moment. They watched this man execute a perfect, frictionless social interaction. He demonstrated the exact type of effortless connection that the author struggles with.
And that's why it stuck.
Exactly. The memory clung to them for a decade because it represented an idealized version of how humans should interact in shared spaces.
It reminds me of the feeling of inadequacy when you watch a master craftsman at work.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Like you watch a carpenter build a flawless joint,
Yeah.
or you see a musician improvise a beautiful solo, and you think, I want to create that exact feel.
Yeah, I want to do that.
But then when you pick up the tools, you immediately realize you lack the physical dexterity, the training, and the innate confidence to pull off the same maneuver.
And that realization of limitation is explicitly documented in the text.
How do they phrase it?
The author reflects on witnessing the intimidating man and writes, "I thought someday I want to copy that, but I couldn't."
But I couldn't.
Yeah. That admission of defeat, but I couldn't, is the emotional core of the entire blog post.
It's such a raw vulnerability. They carried the desire to be that man for 10 years, repeatedly facing their own inability to manifest that level of casual bravery.
But the text immediately follows that admission with the turning point.
Okay, what's the pivot?
I couldn't, so I took this form.
So I took this form. Wow.
That single sentence reframes everything we've discussed so far. The entire 3-year practice of leaving covert, handwritten notes is not an original invention. It is a direct substitute.
A substitute for speaking.
Exactly. It is the author's way of metabolizing their failure to speak. They could not replicate the intimidating man's method, so they preserved his intent and engineered a completely different delivery system that accommodated their own social anxiety.
3 years of writing notes to compensate for a decade of silence.
Yeah.
It is a stunning adaptation of human empathy. They accepted that they would never be the smiling, vocal customer at the checkout line, but they refused to let their gratitude remain invisible.
They found another way.
And if this entire habit is built on substituting written text for spoken words, it completely reframes the actual phrases they were choosing to write on these pieces of paper.
Yes, the specific vocabulary is really important here.
Because they aren't just rubber stamping a generic thanks, right? The final section of the blog explores the specific vocabulary of their covert operation.
The author details a repertoire of phrases, proving that the notes are highly contextualized to the environments they are left in.
Can you give an example from the text?
Sure, they specifically mention leaving notes that say, "Thanks for the meal," which translates the cultural weight of honoring the preparer of food, and notes that simply say, "It was delicious."
By writing, "It was delicious," and leaving it on a restaurant table, they are specifically targeting the invisible labor of the kitchen staff.
Right, the people you never see.
Exactly. Usually the only feedback a line cook receives is an empty plate coming back to the dishwasher, or a complaint if something went wrong.
True.
The author is sending a direct, positive signal through the noise of the restaurant environment. They are tailoring the gratitude to the specific geography of the unseen worker.
And having explained their methods, their motivations, and the history behind it all, the author makes a fascinating rhetorical shift.
What do?
They move from introspection to direct address. They issue an invitation to the reader.
Like telling the reader to do it too.
Exactly, urging them to make and try it. But what is crucial is how they justify this invitation. They don't just say, "Do this because it's nice."
Okay, so what's their reasoning?
They frame the necessity of these written notes as an antidote to the conditions of modern life.
The conditions of modern life. That's a big claim for a small piece of paper.
It is. The text specifically cites daily busyness, pressure, and stress as the primary barriers that make it difficult to convey honest feelings.
So they are identifying a systemic environmental problem. It's not just that we are individually embarrassed or shy, like the author admits to being.
Right, it's bigger than just being introverted.
It is that the architecture of our daily lives, the constant rushing from point A to point B, the notifications on our phones, the endless to-do lists, it acts as a silencer.
The busyness creates a thick layer of static between people. The author is suggesting that modern life structurally discourages the kind of gentle, direct interaction they witnessed in the supermarket 10 years ago.
Because we just don't have the time to pause.
We might feel a profound sense of gratitude that our meal was delicious or that the hospital waiting room is clean, but the momentum of our stress propels us out the door before we can articulate it.
We're already thinking about the next thing.
Exactly. And the handmade note is presented as a technology to bypass that static.
A technology to bypass the static. If the busyness of life is the disease, the note in the pocket is the cure.
That's a great way to put it.
You don't need to find the perfect moment to stop and speak. You just need to drop the paper and keep moving.
Just drop it and go.
And that physical act of dropping the paper leads to the blog's conclusion, which breaks down the complex psychological payoff of the entire process.
Yes, the emotional payload.
The author describes the emotional payload residing in every single piece of paper they leave behind, dividing it into 3 distinct feelings.
And the text is incredibly precise in dissecting this emotional cocktail. The first emotion they identify is the thrill of leaving it after it's placed.
The thrill, like an adrenaline rush.
Kind of, yeah. It is the excitement of harmless, joyful espionage.
Harmless espionage, I love that.
The author is engaging in a covert operation against the mundane reality of the space.
You can just imagine the physical sensation of it, right? Looking around to ensure no one is watching, slipping the paper under the hospital chair, and walking away with a secret.
A secret mission.
Exactly. It reintroduces a sense of playfulness and rebellion into the sterile environs of adulthood.
But that thrill is immediately counterbalanced by the second emotion detailed in the text. The selflessness of the act.
The selflessness.
Right. The author describes embracing the feeling of, it's okay if it's not seen. They are actively detaching themselves from the outcome of the transaction.
Oh, wow. This directly attacks our usual expectations of a social contract.
Oh, so.
Well, usually, if we do a good deed, we crave the receipt. We want the eye contact, the nod of acknowledgement, the reciprocal thank you.
We want the credit.
We want the credit. But the author is deliberately throwing their gratitude into a void, fully accepting the very high probability that a busy cleaner might just sweep it up with a broom and throw it in the trash without ever reading the words.
And the text says, that is okay.
That blows my mind. That is okay.
It is an exercise in releasing control. They are acknowledging that the recipient's reality is separate from their own intent.
Okay, so we have the thrill of the mission and the selflessness of letting it go. What's the third emotion?
The third and final emotion the text describes is the expectation, or rather, the pure distilled hope.
Oh,
The text phrases it simply as, I hope it makes them happy.
it is stripped of all ego.
Completely.
You have the adrenaline of the secret agent, the total detachment of releasing the outcome, and the fundamental human desire to create joy in the life of a stranger. And all of those complex layers are compressed into a tiny piece of paper sitting next to a toilet sink.
Synthesizing those three emotions gives us the complete trajectory of the author's 3-year journey, really.
Walk us through it.
Well, it begins with the secretive thrill, which serves as the necessary armor to bypass their social embarrassment.
Right.
It moves into the selfless acknowledgement of the unseen worker's reality, accepting that the gesture might remain invisible.
Releasing the outcome.
And it rests entirely on the foundational desire to spread the same kind of joy they witnessed a decade ago.
It is a remarkable progression mapped out in such a short piece of writing.
Yeah.
So to pull all of these threads together, we started this deep dive looking at what initially appeared to be a highly questionable, borderline irritating habit.
Deliberately leaving paper under chairs and on tables in public spaces.
Right. And by strictly following the author's own internal logic, we traced that habit back to its profound roots.
We examined how the inability to replicate a 10-year-old memory of an intimidating man's gentle grace forced the author to innovate.
Yeah. We explored the concept of engineered cognitive dissonance, where the friction of annoyance is used to amplify the impact of unexpected gratitude.
And we saw how these notes function as an emotional timeshift, a deeply personal workaround for the embarrassment of speaking up in a world suffocated by busyness and stress.
It is a quiet rebellion. It transforms the invisibility of service work into a moment of sudden, sharp connection.
And remember, the author's invitation asks us to audit our own environments. As you navigate your week, consider the spaces that are magically reset for you. The clean floors, the cleared tables, the stocked shelves.
The things we just take for granted.
Consider the unseen workers who maintain that illusion of constant freshness. And critically, consider the internal friction you might feel in acknowledging them and how you choose to navigate that silence.
Exactly. Which leaves me with a final provocative thought drawn directly from the mechanics the author describes.
Let's hear it.
The text makes it clear that the author experiences the thrill of the placement and embraces the selflessness of no return expected. They accept that the paper might be swept away unread.
Right, they're fine with that.
So if all of that emotional weight, the thrill, the release of ego, the pure hope, is fully realized by the author the instant the note leaves their fingers,
Yeah.
does the piece of paper actually successfully fulfill its entire purpose right then and there?
Oh, that's interesting.
Does the act of translating internal empathy into physical reality constitute a complete success, regardless of whether that annoyed, gloomy-faced cleaner ever actually stops to uncrumple it?
It forces us to ask if the value of a gift lies in the receiving or entirely in the giving.
Something for you to debate with yourself the next time you feel the urge to walk past an opportunity for connection. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Catch you next time.